So, mobile, where are we? Are we at a marketplace right now? Are we bullish about mobile, or are we just sort of waiting and seeing what's going to happen? Like, what do you feel the sentiment is right now on the buy side?
It's been an interesting year coming from Asia and seeing where the US is at. I've been very impressed, not just because Erin's talking next, but with what P&G is doing. Really thinking mobile from a data point of view through. Today on the video side, I was interested to see not that many people talking about data. I think the way InMobi is seeing the world right now, we're seeing ourselves as a data company first and foremost. And so one of the things that we're starting to think down the line is the value exchange with the actual end user. Mm-hmm. And so I think we feel that the world could change quite dramatically. We could move into an opt-in type world. Or we might have to rethink our relationship with brands so that at the end of the day, the user's comfortable with sharing data. So I think even video formats might be surprised as how they might have to evolve in the face of that. A lot of the targeting capabilities that we've had so far don't rival that of mobile. So I think that's going to be quite inspiring for everybody to think through.
They don't, in that, like, what is the fact that we don't sort of have, in a pure sense, a unique ID on a mobile device? What does that mean for us right now at a point in time as an industry, and what's it mean in 12, 24 months?
Well, I mean, we're trying to figure that out right now, right? I mean, most of the media that I see spend, with every dollar spent, not a hell of a lot of data is actually being gathered through that, and that's something that could be done quite easily. So I think we would, we're trying to get, and like I said, that's why I was pretty impressed with what Erin's doing. We're trying to get brands to really invest for the next 20 years, not just for a tactical buy. And so in a way, it seems very similar to when we all sort of started evangelizing the web. And the structures were not in place to actually take advantage of that. So a lot of the conversations right now are about infrastructure, about data warehouses that can dominate thinking over the next 20, 30 years. And it all starts with that unique user or ID that you just mentioned.
I mean, most of the buys that you're fulfilling for mobile, is it a mobile-only buy? Are we on the cusp of sort of, cross-platform planning? Like, is it really media mix? Are we looking at that holistically, or is mobile still sort of stand on its own?
Well, the thing is that I think we want it all to work seamlessly together. And so we're looking at it from that lens, and I mean the industry. But I think what mobile is doing, and especially in mobile-first markets, and I guess that's why our heritage in Asia is actually helping us, it's potentially something that will take on its own life. I think learning that in China, mobile browsing has actually surpassed PC browsing, and the demands that that's going to put in terms of our investments in technology and platforms. I definitely feel that people a little bit underestimate the mobile wave.
In the US specifically?
Well, actually everywhere, but I think I've just been a little bit surprised, so I think hopefully this year, we're also feeling this year is a year with serious investment and long-term thinking in mobile is happening in the US. But having been in the social wave and all the other search, display, I think mobile is slightly different. I think this is we don't know where the screens are going. We know that the one with the most data is definitely the one that's with you all the time. And that's the smartphone, that's the tablet.
And it's inherently an addressable platform, right? Yep. I mean, that's something that's sort of the enigmatic nature of it. We don't have a UID, but inherently, as given the use case of mobile, it is an addressable platform, which I think is really interesting. Yep. And when we untap that value, I think it's going to be a sea change. So one of the things about mobile, especially coming from the agency side, is that, I mean, when mobile display is sort of straightforward, right? We have ad formats there. But as we move into video on mobile, right? Optimization of screen size, shorter formats, and this idea of where do you go in a construct of a click-through into an app environment or whatever. I mean, that's not as simple as building a web page anymore, right? I mean, apps are kind of software. Like, is the advertising community equipped to deploy creatively on mobile right now?
Well, it's funny you say that again. I think most of that most of the community is relying on companies like ourselves to lead them in the creative space, which is a bit crazy. You know, I mean, we're doing our best to become that creative shop, but that is not really our responsibility. So I think taking charge of certain elements like creative from both the brand and the agency side is really important. So,
but you feel like that's something you have to fulfill. There's a gap that you have to fulfill in order to be able.
Totally. I guess at the same time, we are the ones that are most knowledgeable about what's happening and how the device is being used. I mean, last couple of years we've been seeing creative that changes based on whether the phone is on your left hand or the right hand. The left hand, we know it's the left hand because of the tilt of the phone versus the right hand, and then the creative changes so that the thumb cannot, you know, like it's not interfering or it's actually not hindering. So things like that, like we know and we live and breathe it, but somebody that doesn't live and breathe it, that won't probably be thinking about that. So I guess we do have a role to play, but it's pretty, you know, it's a little bit surprising that we should be leading with creative and mobile.
But how do we educate the creative community and the advertising community to understand the subtleties of mobile and responsive design and understanding what a gyroscope enables and leveraging that, right? I mean, because if you look at platforms that are activating that, like the 360 and Xbox One, like they have a roadmap to keep their creative and not necessarily democratize it to the people. How do you do that? Like, that seems like a huge business burden.
Well, we've done it before, right? I mean, we've done it with the web, we've done it with social. It's not like all of those started from day one and everybody embraced them.
But I'm saying, but in mobile specifically, there are a few great leaders, you guys being one of them, right? Actually moving a decent chunk of the inventory as the platform serving it. Some of that, it feels like you're carrying a larger percentage of that burden than we had in the web, for example, in search and display.
Yes. And I think it all comes down a little bit to, you know, profit at the end of the day. I think a lot of the agencies, especially the creative agencies, with the guidance of some of the media buying agencies, they need to find a way to actually make money out of this. So I think that needs to happen, and until that happens, we're probably going to have to lead it ourselves. But I think this is where the agencies that are really close to the brands know that there's the audience, like that's why I think Asia is a really interesting example for us to learn from, because brands have had to adapt to a mobile-first world, and I think we're mostly following. So the next year is going to be a really good year to experiment, to do partnerships, and to really learn so that we lay the good foundation for the coming years.